I told myself I'd never wear the gray jacket. Not because of the pay, it was better than cleaning fryers at the truck stop, better than riding shotgun on the scrap truck, better than day labor with men who coughed through their masks and drank away lunch. Not because of the hours, our counties always run on graveyards and split shifts. Not even because of the smell. You learn to live with chemical lemon chasing old blood the way you live with the paper mill stink in August. No, I swore I'd never wear the gray because of what folks would say at the VFW fish fry. "You work out there now?" they'd ask, loading hushpuppies like they were stacking coal. "At Harrowgate." And then the little pause, the kind you hear before the choir starts a hymn or before the foreman reads the notice that the plant is closing again. I took the job anyway. You can dress up a decision with bills and numbers, but the truth is simpler. They told me if I got hired as an attendant, I'd qualify for the employee family visitation tier, which meant more minutes, which meant I could see Mom without begging the front desk like a dog who knows a trick. The morning I applied, the sky above the county courthouse wore February skin, slate and thin. The flag on the south lawn made a sound like a wasp trapped in a paper cup. I parked the Chevy and left the heater running because the fan only worked on high, and because the truck sometimes refused to turn over if you shut it completely. Harrowgate sat 2 miles east as the crow flies, which is a joke in our town. Crows don't fly much that way anymore. Not since the walls went up and the lights learned to look like noon at midnight. People say birds know when a place isn't for them. On the way I passed the Dollar General, the Lutheran church, the brick shell of the old textile mill with windows knocked out like punched teeth, and finally the big green sign, Harrowgate Correctional Campus, serving Grendel County since 1956. Serving. Some words work too hard. I pulled into the visitor lot. The east wind carried a smell that didn't have a proper name: bleach, hot metal, something like lightning if you've ever stuck your head out when a storm hair-raises the world. The front facade looked like something half courthouse, half Roman plate you'd see in a school book. Long runs of stone, brutal columns, a frieze with county stars and wheat stalks. They say prisoners carved the flourishes back when the place first opened. They say a lot. I've learned the county says more when it tries to say nothing. Inside the vestibule there's a second set of doors and a glass that isn't glass. You can't put a finger on why, you just know it would cut the soul worse than the skin. An older man, stool lean, worked the ID desk. His badge read STU like half the men in this county because apparently only 5 names get recycled for white guys over 50. "Visiting?" he asked, gum clicking. His eyes took in my jacket, which wasn't yet gray, the zipper stuck halfway, or applying. "Applying," I said. "Attendant." He made a face like I'd told a joke he'd already heard. "Fill that, print clear." He slid me a clipboard and a pen that wanted to quit. "Head guard'll decide if you're a good fit." "What's his name?" I asked like an idiot. Stu scratched the back of his neck and looked over my head the way men do when they don't want to be responsible for an answer. "He's the head guard," he said finally, which wasn't an answer. I printed my letters careful as stencils. Calvin Tucker. Address at the edge of the grove where scrub pines and the Dollar General conspire to trap plastic bags in their branches. Former employer, Hawthorne Foundry, defunct. I hesitated at the next line. Family inside. I wrote Lillian Tucker, mother, then crossed and reprinted it neat like a prayer. When I was done, I slid it back. Stu glanced and smacked the button under the desk with the heel of his hand. The inner doors clicked the way a padlock clicks in a movie, too loud, too sharp. "You'll want to mind the shine," Stu said as I stepped through. "Floor's been waxed." "What?" I said. He pointed with his chin. "Don't stand looking too long at yourself. Folks get lost in that." I thought he was joking. Then I stepped into Harrowgate proper and saw the floor. You could read a newspaper in that reflection. You could part your hair with the bevel of your cheekbone. Whoever waxed it had a beef with the concept of friction. I watched my boots find their way and decided looking up was safer. The lobby is all height, the kind of height small towns build when they want to feel like capital cities. There's a cage behind the front desk that looks like it belongs in a bank that doesn't trust anyone. Behind the mesh sat a man in a gray jacket with the kind of face that sets dogs to barking. Not cruel, honest. Big-knuckled hands. Hair clipped neat like he used to be a Marine and never got around to growing it wrong. He looked at me the way a mechanic looks under a hood, making note of rattles and smells. "Mr. Tucker," he said. "Attendant applicant." His voice had weight, not loud but heavy the way a wet quilt is heavy. It reminded me of Sunday mornings when Dad would lift the cast-iron lid on the Dutch oven and say, "Biscuits are done." "Yes, sir," I said, "because that's what you say to voices like that in this county." He nodded once. "You can call me." What came out after that wasn't sound, it was static. Not radio static, not bees, something in between. My inner ear went hot like it had swallowed a match. "I'm sorry," I said, wobbling. "I didn't catch." "You caught it," he said. "You just can't keep it." He set my clipboard on the desk, made a note with a pencil that tried to behave like a fountain pen. "Security measure. Names get people killed, mine most of all." "Is that legal?" I asked before I could stop myself. The part of me that still believes in paperwork spoke without permission. His smile didn't show teeth. "You'll find Harrowgate's in compliance with every law it recognizes." I didn't know what that meant either. He stood. People say big men unfold when they rise. This guy did the opposite. He compressed into readiness. He wore the gray like a skin, not a uniform, and somehow the button lines made more sense on him than on the hanger. He opened the cage door and stepped out. The keys at his belt made no sound at all, which seemed wrong. Keys should announce themselves like a train crossing. "Walk with me," he said. Stu muttered something as we passed, a little prayer disguised as a cough. We went through a door wider than it needed to be and into a corridor that looked like it was laid out by someone who liked to see men get lost. On the left and right, open cells, empty. The air moved like it was thinking about weather. From the corner of my eye, something shifted in the nearest cell too quick. When I turned, the bunk was flat as a tongue depressor, the toilet clean enough to eat off. "Don't answer if you hear anyone who sounds like kin," the head guard said. "That's not for you." "Who is it for?" "Folks who speak to phantoms don't finish their shifts." He glanced at my boots, at the scuff I'd already put into the perfection of the wax. "You'll learn the routes. They change." We came to one door and another, each asking for a different behavior from the keys. He'd hold them up, not so much choosing as letting the lock pick the key. He didn't look back to see if I was keeping up. I was, the way a dog keeps up with a four-wheeler, a little wild-eyed but eager. "Your mother," he said finally, as if we'd been discussing her the whole time. "You'll see her. Today." My voice cracked on the day like I was 14 asking to borrow the car. "Maybe." He looked at the wall, then at me, then at the wall again, as if consulting with the stone. "If the time holds. If the minute hand hears a preacher," he said. "It lies convincingly." We turned into a corridor that refused to end. Architects talk about vanishing points. This one had 3. The lights hummed in a way that might have been the lights or might have been my blood. My tongue tasted like a copper penny. I kept walking. I kept not looking at my reflection in the polished block tiles. I kept not answering the voice that said, plain as a sheriff at your door, "Cal, that you, baby?" It wasn't her. I knew because Mom hasn't called me baby since Dad died. Grief hardens language, it sands the sugar off. After an hour of walking and 20 minutes of questioning my own count of what an hour means, the head guard stopped before a wall that was all wall, nothing to it. No slot, no hinges, just the color of rain. "Sit," he said. There was a chair behind me I swear hadn't been there. I sat anyway. You do what chairs ask of you when you're tired. He put his hand out the way a man does to a dog that needs calming. He didn't touch the wall, he didn't have to. Something in it clicked like a mouth unsealing from a dentist's suction. The slab split along a seam and slid. The sound belonged in a meat locker. 5 minutes, he said. I thought. You thought an hour. He shrugged without humor. You'll get 5 minutes in 5 hours, or you'll get 5 hours that feel like 5 minutes. That's how it pays. On the other side of the opening was a room too small for what it needed to hold. The chair opposite mine had straps at hip, wrist, ankle. The woman in the chair looked like a photograph left in the sun, then folded into a wallet and sat on for 10 years. When I say my mother, I don't mean what photographs mean. I mean what the body remembers when someone once held it upright. Her hair had refused brushes. Her eyes did arithmetic on everything and came up short every time. There was a muzzle, there had to be. If you're not from here, I cannot make that make sense. "Mom," I said. She looked at my face like a puzzle box she'd once known how to open. The first second was absence, the second was math, the third second was recognition. After that, the fourth second was anger. She pulled against the straps. The leather made a sound a belt only makes after raising an oldest child and seeing things. "None of that," the head guard said, keeping his voice on the side of gentle. "Behave and you get the boy's voice 5 minutes. Her eyes cut to him with such contempt that I felt heat. Then she looked back at me, and the contempt melted into that thing I haven't earned and never will, the place in a mother where the world starts. "I got the job," I said, because I could not think of a sentence that wasn't that. "Attendant." Her eyes went winter hard. "I know." I lifted my hands, palms out, the way men do when they want to show there's no gun, just bad choices. "It means I can see you more." She blinked once, slow, full of meanings. I've seen that blink at county social workers, on casseroles delivered by women who work kindness like it's a weed whacker, on pastors with too much advice. This blink said, "You sweet idiot." "I'll bring you news," I said. "From outside, from church, from the grove." She made a sound behind the muzzle that found a way through leather. It wasn't a word. It was what a word uses to warm itself before it becomes a word. The head guard stood at my shoulder, not touching but present like a wall you can lean on if you collapse correctly. 2 minutes, he said. 2 minutes is the time between a farmer seeing lightning and counting the thunder. 2 minutes is how long it takes a guilty man to confess if his confessor looks like a friend. 2 minutes is how long my body remembered being a child. I told her about the truck, about the hole in the bed I kept promising to patch, about the way the Grove pines kept plastic like trophies, about the Waffle House waitress who calls me sweetheart like she's reading a service manual. I told her about Dad, not the illness or the cold room after, just how his boots sounded coming down the hall when I'd pretend to be asleep and he'd pretend to believe me. "Time," the head guard said, and even he sounded sorry. "Wait," I said. "Wait, One more. I don't know what the one more was. There is always one more when love is rationed. She stilled. The kind of stillness churches wish for. Then she leaned toward me as far as the straps allowed. Her eyes were so wide that I could see myself in them, small and bent. She opened her mouth behind the muzzle, and I swear I heard my name the way a tornado siren sings county lines. "Calvin," she said, "I know what I just wrote, and I know what the leather across her mouth says is possible. I'm telling you what I heard." "Time," the head guard said again, softer. The wall slid. The seam sealed. The sound was the sound of a closing that's been practiced so often it became an art. We walked back. Or maybe the building walked us. Every corridor I thought I'd memorized had moved the furniture around. I kept the beat of the steel toe of my right boot so I wouldn't give in to the thought that I'd been here since '56 and just now noticed. Back in the lobby, the light did a summer evening act, though my phone said 2:14 p.m. Stu had replaced his gum with a toothpick that looked illegal in 3 states. The floor reflected the cage, the man behind it, and me, but not quite correctly. The cage bars counted different in the shine. "Orientation starts tomorrow," the head guard said, sliding a laminated badge across the desk through the gap. It had my name on it and a photo where I looked like I'd seen my ghost and decided to split rent with him. "Thank you," I said, "because that is what you say even when gratitude is the wrong prayer." He nodded. "There's a break room off laundry if you need a breath." "Laundry? You'll start there." He tilted his head toward the floor, toward the reflection that didn't match. "Mind the shine." I looked down against Stu's advice. My reflection looked back the way a window looks into a room that isn't the room you're in. "Hello, Calvin," my reflection said. The words didn't travel through ears, they traveled along the bone, almost ripe. I didn't breathe. The head guard didn't pretend he hadn't noticed. He just adjusted the hang of his jacket and glanced once at the floor. "Don't talk back," he said. I shut my mouth on a "yes, sir." The reflection smiled first. I almost smiled back. Almost. Which is exactly the size of mistake Harrowgate knows how to make into a door. Outside, the wind cut from the east. The crows did not fly anywhere. The Chevy turned over on the third try, which counted as mercy. On the dashboard, the little St. Christopher metal mom had zip tied to the rear view spun once like a coin, deciding whether it's heads or tails or a third thing. I drove home the long way, past the Lutheran church and the mill, past the Dollar General with the plastic in the trees that catches the sun just wrong. By the time I pulled into the patch of dirt that pretends to be my driveway, I had admitted 2 things to myself in the plain grammar my father taught me. I took the job, and I will go back tomorrow. On my first official day in Gray, the county clock lied to me twice before noon. At 6:42 a.m., the courthouse bell tolled 7 times, though the sun still clung low and orange over the water tower with its flaking Grendel-proud paint. At 11:03 a.m., my phone jumped to 1:17, then jerked back, like signal and time had collided at the 4-way stop and were arguing who had right-of-way. I told myself it was a tower glitch, a satellite hiccup, the kind of thing the town's Facebook group would roast for 3 days and forget by Friday. But when I stepped through Harrowgate's employee entrance, the second hand on the wall clock started preaching again. The employee wing smelled different than the visitor vestibule. Less lemon, more lye. Less perfume, more rot hidden under bleach. I flashed my laminated badge at a glass puck that swallowed its own glow and beeped in a key not quite music. The inner door unlocked. Behind it, Stu leaned on his stool like it had grown around him. Uniform fits, he said, eyeing my jacket. I'd buttoned it wrong, my hands had decided to turn left-handed out of spite. Don't worry, building'll tailor it. He flicked his toothpick to the other side of his mouth. Want the nickel tour or you want to get to laundry before the ringer pukes? Laundry, I said. The head guard. The sound hit my ear again, static. Bees in a blender trying to harmonize. Stu winced. Yeah, him. He likes new hires to start where the building remembers. I didn't know how to ask what a floor could remember, so I followed him. The corridor ran straight for a dozen strides, then decided other directions were better. We went left, then down 2 steps, through a short dogleg I could have measured with my arm yesterday but would need a truck today. The lights changed at every turn, yellow, white, police blue, then the dull ivory of old bone. Rule for you, Stu said like he'd been waiting. Don't measure Hall using Hall B's yardstick. Time gets charged different near the inner tiers. Charged, I asked, as in a battery or a toll road. He snapped his toothpick in half without noticing. You'll feel it, especially when you go to see family. I made the mistake of glancing at my badge photo, checking if I looked as unsure as I felt. My reflection met my eyes, then smiled on its own, just a little. I turned the badge face down. I've got visitation blocks, employee family tier. MM. The way he said it meant bless your heart without the blessing. You'll get your minutes, you just won't keep the hours. We passed a corner where the wall wore a brass plaque, the kind of memorial small towns pay for when they want names carved into permanence. Little Fines Lodge Fundraiser, 1979. At the bottom, names in 2 columns, each hand-stamped neat. My eyes slid toward them like a marble finds a slope. Don't, Stu said. I wasn't. You were. He stopped. The corridor seemed to stop with him. You can read any list in this county without your teeth falling out. Church bulletin, Kiwani's roster, memorial at the park. But in here, after dusk, keep your eyes off brass. Even before dusk, best to read with your chin, not your eyes. Of course, I looked. Rules make men look. At the top of the second column was a blank line, like a name had been scrubbed off with steel wool, or maybe never carved, though everyone knew it had. The gap made the rest of the names look nervous. What happens if you read it? I asked. Depends which name, he said. Sometimes you just forget where you were going. Sometimes you forget who you were going to. We moved on, and I was grateful. Stationary men make good targets here, even when nobody's aiming. Laundry sat behind a door thick as a bank vault. The room hummed at a pitch I felt in my molars. The washers were the old kind, white enamel chrome dials, the kind that outlive counties. The ringers looked like a pair of hands that had decided to be metal. A woman in her 50s with forearms like rebar tossed gray sheets into a bin. She sized me up like a farm wife sizes up a rooster. Can he make noise and sense? You the new boy who listened? She asked. I try. You'll do. She shook a sheet open. It snapped like a flag. I'm Rhonda. You ring twice. Because once leaves yesterday in M. Yesterday sings at night. She tossed me gloves green as cartoon frogs. Earplugs are for cowards. If you want quiet, you ring. So I rung. She watched. 10 minutes later she nodded like giving me a degree. Good torque, she said. You been mechanical, foundry before it. I know. She fed a sheet into the ringer. It came out thin and obedient. Everything that was fire turns to paperwork now. The hours blurred. I learned the heel of hand twist, not knuckles. I learned never to lay wet cloth on the floor, because the floor remembers shapes and calls them back after midnight. I learned the difference between copper blood, iron pills, and fear souring in cotton. I learned that the hampers weren't labeled for people, Block 3C refectory, but for the rooms themselves. Rooms get jealous. Rhonda said so. Around what should have been 11:30, my eyes watered like a storm had crossed the county line. The lights dimmed, brightened, settled into that gray basketball gym glow. "Break," Rhonda said. 10. Is it really 10? It's 10 the way a doctor says this'll pinch. She jerked her chin toward the break room. "Coffee's hot. Don't mind the poster." The poster was one of those old safety is a choice jobs. Someone had drawn horns on the smiling man with dry erase. Below, in smaller letters no printer made, "If your reflection smiles first, don't." The coffee tasted like tire water and communion. I drank it anyway. My phone said 3:07. The wall clock said 12:09. The second hand marched like a soldier. I thumbed open messages. Dad's number still sat there, a ghost I couldn't delete. Angel from Waffle House had texted, "Open, tonight." Nothing that explained why my gut said lunch and my eyes said late afternoon. "Calvin." The microwave door whispered it. My reflection in the chrome grinned wide. "You're getting good at the ringer," it said. "Wrists like a man who means it. Did your father teach you torque or the building?" "Break's over," Rhonda called. "Not yet," the reflection whispered. "You've got a minute left if you take it." "What do you want?" I asked the corner of chrome. "What the building wants," it said. "I want you to learn to keep more than you spend. Time, among other currencies." Its grin widened. "You'll visit her again today." "No," I said. "Visitations Tuesdays and Fridays." I saw the schedule. "You saw a schedule," it replied. "Not the hunger. Hunger has its own." Rhonda slapped the ringer. The sheet obeyed. By the time the head guard came for me, my shoulders burned. He called from behind the mesh, "Family Minute." Today. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We walked corridors that weren't the same as this morning. They never are. Voices braided themselves from vents. Voices that knew things they shouldn't. My throat clenched. The guard half raised his hand in case I stumbled. We climbed a stair that hadn't existed yesterday into a place too vast for 4 stories. Imagine an old New York block, tiers stacked to the rafters. Now multiply by a liar's imagination and tip it sideways. Catwalks cut across at angles geometry teachers would burn books over. The air was 10 degrees cooler, lips splitting dry. "That shouldn't," I whispered. "Layers of security," he said like a creed. Prisoners watched. Some laughed without mouths. Some pressed frozen faces to bars until the metal sang. "Cal," one whispered from a vent, voice braiding silk and sirens. "Don't," the guard said. I stopped. He didn't look angry, just tired of watching men almost feed themselves to the lee. We reached the visitation wall. No seam, just stone the color of rain. 2 minutes, he said. "That's a feast today." The wall split. She was there, different but still her. Bruises faded to yellow. Her hair braided by unseen hands. Her eyes found mine. They did the 3-second math, absence, calculation, recognition. "Hi," I said, because good words get stuck when love is rationed. She blinked once. "You sweet idiot." "I'm working laundry," I said. "Rhonda says ring twice. She says the floor keeps score. If a muzzle can smile, hers did." "1 more minute," the guard said, softer than yesterday. "I'll figure the math," I promised. "Of this place, of these minutes, of how to keep you from being part of its budget." The wall twitched, cold under my fingers. "Don't pet the walls," he warned. "The seam's sealed." I carried 2 minutes back the way you carry a tool you don't trust, tight, ready to drop if it hums. The lobby light slanted late. My phone said 5:41. "See," Stu said, "charged." I punched my card. The machine thunked, crisp but wrong. Why's it feel like the building wants me both on time and late? I asked. Because it does, Stu said. Obedience and confusion, easier to shape a man that way. I glanced toward the brass plaque, the blank lines shimmered, letters rose like bread. The guard's shadow crossed the lobby, his voice carried weight, Calvin, the letters sank back. Good, he said, watching me, not the brass. Behind him, the chapel door exhaled, walnut and funeral. Tomorrow you'll learn the long way, the short way steals years. I left through dusk that smelled like rain and secrets. In the Chevy, St. Christopher spun slow. My reflection in the rear view waved, harmless as a kid in a bus window. I did not wave back. The next morning, Harrowgate smelled like rain, though the county sky hadn't offered a drop. The air past the front gate always carried something extra, an aftertaste the weather couldn't explain. Yesterday it had been copper. Today it was damp hymnals, the kind that warp in church basements. I told myself it was mildew in the ductwork, but part of me knew mildew doesn't hum in your jawbone. I clocked in. The machine coughed out an ink stamp that first read 0666 smeared, then settled on 0706. Stu whistled something between Hank Williams and static. You're with the chaplain today, he said. I thought laundry. You thought wrong, building shuffled, happens. He smirked. Better hope it didn't reshuffle you. The head guard met me 2 corridors in. Jacket pressed, eyes steady, voice heavy. With me. We walked the long way, the one he'd told me didn't steal years. Still, the lights flickered out of rhythm, and by the time we emerged into a higher chamber, my stomach swore we'd skipped lunch. Where? I asked. The chapel, he said. Everything here has one. I didn't see a cross. You won't. The chapel stood behind doors tall enough for giants. The stone frame didn't look carved but poured, as if Harrowgate had grown it overnight. The hinges groaned when he pushed them open, but the groan had breath in it, not metal. Inside, pews black as bone, polished smooth, a pulpit without a Bible, candles smoking without flame. And on the far wall a window-shaped gap that held no glass, no outside, only a deep gray that pulsed if you stared too long. Sit, the guard said. I sat. The bench was warm, like someone had just left it, except the chapel looked empty. Then I realized it wasn't. A man in orange walked out, or maybe through the pulpit. Hair silvered at the temples, eyes the color of old paper. His smile was kind, but his teeth weren't teeth. They were porcelain plates, tiled wrong. Calvin Tucker, he said, as if he'd rehearsed. Welcome to Harrowgate's heart. I didn't sign up for church, I muttered. Good, he said. Churches are for the living, this is something else. He sat across, folding his hands. Too many knuckles or not enough. You know why this county thrives? The chaplain asked. Why the foundry paid your father till it died, why the mill staggered on longer than math allowed, why the Waffle House still pulls graveyard crowds. Luck. I tried. Luck's the word folks use when they don't want to admit to bargains. The candles hissed agreement. Harrowgate wasn't built, the chaplain said. It was bargained into the soil. The county gave it secrecy, and in return it gave the county work, safety, the illusion of justice. That's why folks nod in line at the store and say we get by. They don't see the ledger behind the register. I wanted to laugh, but his eyes were the wrong shade for lying. Above the pulpit hung a coil of prayer ropes. The kind Catholics finger, the kind Baptists ignore. Each knot bore a word, some English, some Latin, some script I didn't recognize. What are those? I asked. Don't ask what, ask when. He leaned closer. Rule: never read the ropes after dark. In daylight they recite hymns. After dusk they write futures, futures with no room for you. I stared too long. One knot shifted. The word began to spell my name. The chaplain snapped his fingers. The letters died. "Careful, son," Harrowgate writes back. The doors groaned. The head guard entered, shadow long. "Enough for today." The chaplain bowed his head, not to me but to him. "He's learning. He's surviving," the guard said. "That's enough." As we left, I glanced back. The window gap throbbed once like a vein. For a heartbeat, faces pressed against the gray, hundreds pale, mouths open. Then the candles hissed and the gray smoothed flat. Back in the corridor, I asked the question that had burned since yesterday. "Who's the warden?" The guard didn't stop. "There is no warden. That's impossible." His look belonged on a gravestone. Harrowgate chooses. The corridor stretched ahead, swallowing minutes I'd never see again. Laundry wasn't just a room. It was a mouth. You felt it the second the vault door sealed behind you. The low vibration that crawled up your legs like a subway train you couldn't see. Pipes hissed above, spitting steam that smelled like pennies left too long in rain. Bins overflowed with gray sheets and uniforms, and every so often one twitched on its own, like whoever wore it hadn't realized they were finished. Rhonda was already at her post, forearms slick, hair pinned in a bun that hadn't lost a fight in 20 years. She didn't look up from the ringer. "You're late." "It's 7:30, I said. "It's 9 here." She fed a sheet through metal rollers, voice flat. "Building keeps 2 hours on good days, 3 when it's restless." I thought she was joking until I saw the wall clock stutter between 8:59 and 9:01, skipping the truth. She tossed me gloves. "Ringer's hungry, feed it slow." The first sheet was damp with more than sweat. It smelled like copper, sharp and wet, and the fabric clung as if reluctant to leave whoever had owned it. I shoved it into the rollers, muscles straining. The machine groaned in a pitch I'd only heard once before when my mother screamed and heads burst like melons. "Good torque," Rhonda muttered. "Don't let it sing too long, that's how memories leak." I swallowed. "Memories." She flicked her eyes to me. "Everything in here remembers. Floors, towels, even the mop water. Spill too much of yourself, it writes you down. Then it plays you back when you least want it." She moved on, sorting bins labeled not by number but by place. Refectory, Block D, crematory. Each pile smelled different. Grease, smoke, something that might have been bone dust. "Why aren't they labeled for people?" I asked. "Because the building doesn't keep people, it keeps rooms. You'll learn." I rung, and the hours bled wrong. The sheets carried stories, and if I listened too close I heard them. Muffled prayers, a sob smothered by a pillow, a laugh that turned into a scream. Once I swear I heard my father's voice muttering about the furnace. By the second hamper my arms shook. By the third my head ached like I'd read too many names on brass plaques. "Break," Rhonda barked. I staggered into the break room. Same safety poster as yesterday, but someone had drawn new words under the slogan. "The floor is a mirror. Don't look down." I tried not to, but when you're told not to look, your eyes betray you. In the polished linoleum, my reflection waited. This time it wasn't smiling. It was wringing sheets on its own, faster than me, stronger. When it noticed me watching, it mouthed something I couldn't hear. Rhonda slammed the break room door. "Don't feed it," she snapped. "What did it say?" "Doesn't matter. You listen, you lose years." I nodded, but the word lingered in my head anyway. It had looked like breathe. Back on the floor, Stu wheeled in a cart stacked with burlap sacks. He dropped one at my feet. "Attendant delivery," he grunted. The sack twitched. "What's in it?" I asked. He smirked. "Whatever's left when the building eats but doesn't finish." I didn't open it. By evening my arms were noodles and my head was a hive. The guard appeared, shadow long across the bins. "Visitation," he said. I wanted to argue Tuesday wasn't on the schedule, but his eyes told me schedules didn't matter. We walked through halls that had shifted again. Somewhere far below, the ringer groaned, chewing on sheets that weren't ours. In the visitation chamber, the wall split. My mother sat strapped, hair tangled, eyes sunken. "Mom," I whispered. Her gaze crawled up, found mine. She didn't thrash this time. She just stared, then tilted her head like she'd heard something behind me. The guard laid a hand on my shoulder. "She knows. They always know when laundry writes you down." I didn't understand until I looked at my hands. Skin bore faint wrinkles, lines that hadn't been there this morning, like the day had stolen years. "2 minutes," the guard said. I leaned forward, words tumbling out. "I'm working here, Mom. I'll find a way. I'll keep you safe." Her eyes brimmed not tears, but something heavier. She shook her head just once, as if to say, "You can't save me if you're already feeding the building." The wall closed before I could argue. On the walk back, I asked the guard, "Why laundry?" "Because it remembers," he said. "And if you're not careful, it remembers you." The lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere deep inside Harrowgate, I swear the ringer laughed. I learned quickly that Harrowgate measured days not by clocks but by horns. The first time I heard it, I thought it was a foghorn from the river, or maybe a mill whistle carried too far on the wind. But the river was 3 miles off. The mill had been dead since Reagan, and no wind ever shook your ribs like that. It started just before dusk. I was folding sheets with Rhonda when the air thickened, the way it does before a tornado siren. Then the horn came, long, low, mournful, like a train blowing through a tunnel carved straight through bone. Rhonda froze mid-fold. "Drop it," she barked. The sheet, drop it now." I obeyed. The fabric hit the floor, writhing like it didn't want to be let go. She pressed her hands over her ears, but not like she was blocking sound. More like she was trying to hold something in. Her jaw clenched hard enough I thought she'd crack a molar. When it ended, she exhaled. "Rule you should have been told. When the horn calls, you don't hold on to anything living or anything that remembers living. That includes sheets." "What is it?" I asked. "The call," she said. "Some say it's the warden, some say it's the Lee itself. Doesn't matter which. What matters is who answers." As if on cue, a scream echoed from somewhere deeper in the prison. Not terror, recognition. The way a dog howls when it hears its pack. Rhonda shoved the sheet into a hamper. "Don't follow the sound," she warned. "You'll never come back the same." Later in the break room, Stu gave his version. "Used to be when the horn blew, one name got called, just one. Whoever it was, they'd vanish from their cell, sometimes mid-step. Other times their bed would be empty come morning, sheets still warm." "What happened to them?" I asked. He spat tobacco juice into a paper cup. "If you're lucky, you'll never find out. If you're unlucky, you'll hear 'em in the ducts." The microwave chrome caught my eye again. My reflection was smiling. This time it whispered, "It won't always call prisoners." That night I dreamed of my father. Not the man in coveralls who taught me torque, but something taller, broader, fur clinging to his shoulders like smoke. He stood in the chapel window, horn pressed to his lips. The sound made my bones rattle. When I woke, my ears rang. Blood spotted the pillow. The next horn came 3 days later. This time I was in the visitation chamber. The wall split and my mother was there, strapped, eyes wild. Before I could speak, the horn bellowed again, rattling the steel. She thrashed so violently 2 straps snapped. The muzzle clanged against her teeth as she tried to scream, but the sound that leaked out wasn't hers. It was the horn itself, echoing back through her throat. The guard stormed in, cudgel raised, voice thunder. "Miss Lily." She froze mid-spasm, eyes locked on mine. And for the first time she looked afraid, not of him, not of the building, but of me. The wall slammed shut. Afterward, I cornered the guard. "What is it? Why does it use her?" He leaned heavy against his cage. His eyes were old stone. "The horn doesn't use anyone. It calls what already belongs. Your father, your mother, and one day maybe you." "No," I said. "I won't answer." He gave a sorrowful smile. "You don't get to choose who you are, Calvin, only how long you pretend." From the corner of my eye, I swore the brass plaque shimmered. The blank line had begun to carve again, letter by letter. C-A-L. The guard's hand slammed against it. The carving stopped. He didn't look at me when he said, "Next time the horn calls, don't be holding anything at all, not even yourself." That night, when I lay in my apartment, I prayed for silence. But the city itself groaned, a low moan beneath the traffic and cicadas. And in the reflection of the dark TV screen, I saw my father raising the horn again. This time, his eyes were mine. The morning after the second horn, I found a letter on my bunk. Not under the door, not slipped in by Stu as a joke. It was just there, heavy parchment folded neat, edges singed like it had come through fire. My name was written in ink so dark it shimmered wet. Inside was a single word, centered, written like a commandment: breath. I stared until my eyes watered. No sender, no seal, just that word. Rhonda found me with it during laundry rotation. She didn't even touch the parchment, just hissed through her teeth. "You got chosen." Chosen for what? The toll. She grabbed a bin, hauling it like it weighed nothing. Every so often the Lee collects. Could be a scream, could be blood, could be something worse. If it wants breath, it wants your lungs. My lungs. "Not out of your chest," she said. "Out of your hours, your minutes, your nights of sleep. You'll still walk around, but part of you will already be gone." That evening the guard called me to the chapel. No schedule, no explanation, just come. The candles smoked blue instead of gray, the pulpit was bare, even the chaplain was gone. Only the guard stood there, cudgel hooked at his belt, eyes carrying that old sorrow. He handed me a small burlap sack. Open. Inside were 3 feathers, not bird feathers, too long, too thin, oily black that shimmered purple if you turned them. They smelled like wet iron. "Breathe on them," he said. "What happens if I don't?" He didn't blink. "Then Harrowgate takes your mother instead." I pressed the feathers to my lips. The moment air left me, they shriveled, curling into ash that vanished before it hit the floor. My chest seized like I'd run miles. My throat ached. And when I glanced at the chapel window, the gray outside had throbbed brighter. The guard nodded. Toll paid. For how long? His silence told me everything, not nearly long enough. That night my dreams were worse. I was back in the laundry, wringing sheets that bled in my hands. But the sound wasn't fabric, it was lungs, wheezing, gasping, trying to hold on. When I looked down, the sheets weren't sheets at all. They were rib cage. And my reflection wrung them faster, whispering, "Don't stop. If you stop, she breathes instead of you." I woke gagging, ribs sore like I'd been beaten. My phone said 4:12 a.m., but the alarm clock said 2:01, and the wall clock said nothing at all. The next visitation confirmed it. My mother sat strapped, hair wild, eyes unfocused. When the wall opened, she turned to me. For a second, clarity pierced through the haze. "You paid it," she rasped through the muzzle. "I felt it leave you. I froze. You know about the toll," she thrashed, chains rattling. "It's never enough, Calvin. It never stops. It takes until you're hollow, and then it keeps taking." The guard barked her name. She stilled, shoulders heaving, gaze locked on me. I wanted to promise her I wouldn't let it, but the words tasted like lies. Back in the lobby, Stu was polishing the brass plaque with a rag. He didn't look up. "You look shorter," he muttered. "I'm the same height. Not in the ways that matter." He leaned close, whispering so only I could hear. "Start counting your breaths, Cal. One day you'll notice some don't add up." I shoved past him, chest tight, lungs burning. Outside, the county sky was bright and harmless, but every breath I took felt leased, like I owed it back with interest. And somewhere deep inside Harrowgate, a horn was waiting to call my name. The first time I saw the book, it wasn't on a lectern or behind glass. It was in the laundry, Rhonda hauled in a hamper-stamped archive. It was heavier than the rest, sagging canvas sides dark with stains that hadn't come from blood. She grunted and shoved it toward me. "Your turn." I dug past sheets stiff with mold, uniforms stiff with worse, and at the bottom lay a book the size of a coffin lid. Its cover was leather, cracked but not cowhide. Something darker, something that had pores. "Don't touch it barehanded," Rhonda warned. Too late. My fingers brushed the cover. The air went hot, then ice cold. When I blinked, I was standing in the chapel again, though I hadn't moved. The pews were full this time, not prisoners, not guards. Faces I half recognized from the plaque. Farmers, mill hands, even my father, eyes glowing faint behind fur that hadn't been his when he was alive. Every face was staring at me. The book opened itself. Pages turned, brittle and infinite. The names crawled like ants. I saw mine. Half-carved, letters unfinished, like the chisel had stopped mid-strike. "Don't read it out loud," a voice said beside me. I jerked. The chaplain stood there, smiling his porcelain smile. "What happens if I do?" I asked. "You give it shape," he said. "Shape gives it hunger." I shut my mouth. The book shivered. A page flipped to my mother's name. Her letters glowed red, as if the parchment was burning underneath. "She doesn't have long," the chaplain murmured. I reached to tear the page. My hand passed through like smoke. The letters pulsed brighter. The guard's voice yanked me back. "Calvin." I was in laundry again, hands still on the cover. Rhonda smacked it away with her rag. "You want to lose a decade in one breath," she snarled. "Don't touch the damn book." I staggered back, gasping. My chest felt emptier than it had since the toll. Later, in the break room, Stu explained. "The book ain't history, it ain't record, it's appetite. Names go in when the Lee claims someone, prisoners, guards, visitors, even townsfolk sometimes. Then why's mine in it?" He didn't answer right away, just chewed his toothpick, eyes heavy. "Finally, because you're not here to visit, Cal, you're here to belong." That night, the dreams sharpened. I was in the chapel again, but this time the book was open on the pulpit. My mother was strapped to a pew, struggling against chains. The pages turned themselves until they found her. Her name was glowing brighter than before. I screamed, "Stop!" The letters crawled off the page, lifting like ash, swirling above her head. They shaped themselves into a noose of light, lowering toward her throat. And then the horn blew. The noose burst, scattering back into ink. My father's voice whispered through the walls, "She's safe for now, because you're paying it instead." I woke drenched, throat raw, lungs aching like I'd been screaming underwater. The next day, when I passed the brass plaque in the lobby, I didn't look. But I didn't have to. I felt it. Letters carving deeper. One line closer to being finished. By now, I'd memorized the walk to the visitation chamber. 12 turns, 2 stairwells, 1 corridor lined with cells that looked empty until you caught motion in the corner of your eye. But this time the route betrayed me. The guard led me down a hall I'd never walked, though it smelled like I had. Sour bleach, candle smoke, the copper tang that never washed out. When we reached the wall, I felt the difference immediately. Too smooth, too new, like fresh plaster sealing a wound. "Sit," the guard said. I sat. The chair felt colder, straps newer, tighter. The wall didn't groan open, it sighed like lungs exhaling. And then my mother was there, except she wasn't. Her body sat strapped, hair tangled, skin pale, but her eyes were wrong. They weren't hers, they were calm, patient, watching me the way a warden watches a prisoner. "Mom," my voice cracked. Her mouth stretched under the muzzle, not quite a smile, not quite a scream. When she spoke, the words weren't muffled, they were clear, cutting through the air like glass. "You don't belong here, Calvin, not yet." The guard stiffened, his hand twitched toward the cudgel. "Miss Lily, that isn't her," I whispered. The thing in my mother's chair tilted its head, the pupils stretched vertical, reptilian. "You pay breath, but breath isn't enough. The Lee will ask for more." I stood. "Where is she?" The not mother leaned forward against the straps. They creaked like wood about to split. "Closer than you want, farther than you think." The wall slammed shut. Back in the lobby, I spun on the guard. That wasn't her. He didn't meet my eyes. Sometimes the Lee shows you what you fear. Sometimes it shows you what it wants. Either way, you don't argue. "I want the real visitation." He leaned against his cage, tired. "You think you can tell the difference?" That night I dreamed of two mothers. One was the woman who used to hum while stirring soup, who scolded me for muddy boots, who pressed my hand at church. The other sat in chains, eyes glowing, voice not her own. They spoke together, overlapping. "Save me. Serve me." I woke with my hands pressed hard to my ears, thumbs digging so deep they ached. Just like when I was a boy, when she screamed and men's heads burst. Except this time no one had told me to. The next visitation came 2 days later. Same chair, same wall, same straps. But when the panel opened, the seat was empty. I sat there staring at nothing until the guard muttered, "Time's up." "No," I snapped. "She wasn't even there." "She was," he said. "You just couldn't see her today." "Then how do I know when it's her, when it's real?" He finally met my eyes. His were hollow, centuries deep. "You don't." The first time I was sent beneath Harrowgate, the floor itself seemed reluctant to let me go. It started with Rhonda tossing a set of towels into my arms, heavy and wet with something thicker than water. "Refuse bin run," she said. "Take him down, don't argue, don't peek." Stu added his toothpick wisdom on the way to the elevator. "If you smell roasting, don't breathe too deep. You'll taste it later." The cage rattled us down past floors I didn't know existed. Numbers blinked overhead, skipping B3, B6, B5, like the building couldn't make up its mind. By the time the gate screeched open, I felt years heavier. The air hit first. It wasn't damp like laundry or stale like the chapel. It was warm, sweet, rotten. The kind of smell that clings behind your teeth and hums when you swallow. "Feast day," Stu muttered. The corridor ahead glowed faint red. Shadows twisted wrong. My gut told me to run, but my legs had forgotten how. The hall opened into a cavern. Tables stretched in every direction, piled with food that shouldn't exist in a prison. Whole roasted hogs with eyes still blinking, bread that steamed though no one sliced it, pitchers of wine darker than blood. Prisoners sat shackled at the benches, tearing into the spread with hands and teeth. And between them walked attendants, uniforms gray like mine, faces blank, eyes empty as they carried more dishes from fires I couldn't see. I stumbled. "What is this?" "The feast," Stu said, "happens when the Lee's restless, lets the inmates gourd, keeps them from clawing through the walls, and it always costs." "Costs what?" He didn't answer. Then I saw. At the head table, my mother sat strapped in her chair, the muzzle bolted tighter than before. A plate of untouched food rested before her, meat, bread, a chalice of wine that shimmered like oil. She wasn't eating. She was screaming through her eyes. I tried to push forward. Stu caught my arm. Don't, you'll be next on the table. The horn blew, not above, not distant, here in the cavern, so close it shook dishes from the tables. The prisoners froze mid-bite, eyes wide, mouths full. Then, as if one signal had snapped them, they turned their heads toward me, every one of them. "You brought the toll," a voice whispered behind my ear. I spun. My reflection stood there, smiling in the polished side of a wine jug. "Breathe deep, Calvin. This is what you paid for." The guard appeared then, cudgel in hand, stepping onto the table as though it were solid ground. His presence pressed the room silent. "Enough," he barked. The food vanished. Plates empty, pitchers dry, crumbs gone as if they'd never been. The prisoners slumped in their chains, hollow-eyed and furious. My mother's chair was empty. Back in the elevator, I demanded, "Where is she?" The guard leaned against the mesh, face drawn. "Sometimes the feast is just the building eating. Sometimes it borrows faces you love to make the food sweeter. Either way, you don't try to take a plate." I clenched my fists. "I saw her. You saw what the Lee wanted." The gate screeched open. My lungs ached like I'd left half my breath below. And for the first time, I wondered if the toll wasn't just breathe leaving me, if it was feeding that table, one plate at a time. Every rule in Harrowgate had been drilled into me by someone. Rhonda muttering over laundry, Stu spitting tobacco wisdom, the guard laying commandments with that tired gravity. But the one that mattered most, the one that nearly broke me, wasn't written anywhere. I learned it the hard way. It began in the break room, same as always. Safety poster with horns doodled on the smiling man. Coffee bitter enough to scour paint. Stu cleaning his nails with his badge. Except this time, someone had tacked a new scrap of paper beneath the poster, in blocky handwriting as if carved more than inked. "Rule 11, don't talk to yourself after midnight." I frowned. I thought there were 10 rules. Stu didn't look up. "There are." "Then what's this?" He shrugged. "Wasn't there yesterday?" Rhonda walked in, caught sight of it, went pale. She tore it down so fast her fingernails ripped the tack clean out of the corkboard. "Whoever put that up is trying to get you killed." "Why?" I asked. "Because the building listens," she hissed. "And if you answer yourself, it stops being you on the other end." That night I woke to whispering. At first I thought it was the neighbors through the thin walls of my apartment, but the voice wasn't muffled, it was clear, it was mine. "Calvin," it said, "don't forget the toll." I sat up, heart hammering. "Who's there?" "Just you," the voice said, calm as glass. "Don't be afraid. You've been talking to me your whole life. In the mirror, in the chrome, in your head, I'm just louder now." I clamped my jaw shut, fists over my ears, but the voice hummed in my chest like a second heartbeat. "Say something," it urged. "Anything. If you don't, I'll borrow your mother's voice instead." The next morning the guard cornered me in the lobby. He didn't ask how I'd slept. He didn't need to. He saw the bags under my eyes, the tremor in my hands. "You heard it." I didn't deny it. "You want the rule?" he asked. I nodded. He leaned close, breath like iron. "Don't answer. No matter what it says, no matter whose voice it borrows, if you answer, you split. And once you're split, the Lee writes you down twice. One name to work, one name to feed." That night the test came again. I was halfway between sleep and dream when my own voice whispered from the ceiling fan. "Calvin, please, just one word so I know I'm not alone." I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. The voice sobbed. Then it shifted. "Son," it said, my father's timbre now. "You remember the furnace, the way I showed you the grip? Answer me, boy, just once." My whole body shook. I almost broke, but I kept silent. The silence stretched, the fan whirred, and then the voice hissed, sharp and furious. "Fine, I'll ask her instead." From the bathroom mirror came my mother's voice, muffled by the muzzle but still hers. "Save me." I screamed, but not words, not answers. just raw sound enough to drown it. The mirror cracked. In the morning, my reflection smiled through the break, mouth full of shards. "You did well," it said, "but you can't ignore yourself forever." And for the first time I understood. The worst rule in Harrowgate wasn't posted on any wall. It was the one you learned too late. The first time the silence came, it didn't arrive all at once. It crept. I was mopping the lobby floor, the kind of shine that makes you doubt your own reflection, when the hum of the fluorescent lights winked out. Not a flicker, not a pop, just gone. The building exhaled. Then nothing. Not the buzz of the lights, not the wheeze of the pipes, not even the scuttle of rats in the walls. Silence so complete it hurt. Stu sat stiff at the desk, toothpick frozen halfway to his mouth. His eyes bulged when he saw me start to speak. He shook his head fast, finger pressed to his lips. The guard stepped from the shadows, heavy and soundless as stone. His mouth shaped words without a voice. "Do not speak." That was when I felt it. The silence wasn't empty, it was crawling. It moved across the floor in waves, like frost advancing across glass. When it touched my boots, I felt my bones vibrate with a pressure that begged to be filled. Down the tier, one of the inmates didn't understand. An old man, skin like paper, clutching the bars. His lips moved, no sound. Then he tried harder. A grunt tore loose, pitiful but real. The silence lunged, his body convulsed, his throat swelled. And then, God help me, something inside him unzipped. From his chest clawed a shape of pure absence, a figure made of gaps where sound should be. It dragged itself forward, mouth wide, though no cry escaped. Every guard in sight froze, pressed against stone, praying the thing wouldn't notice. I almost screamed. The guard's hand clamped my shoulder, iron hard. His eyes burned. "Don't." The thing pressed against the bars, straining. Its featureless face turned toward me, hollow sockets locked on mine. For a heartbeat, I swore it was listening to my pulse, the way a hound listens for a rabbit under the floorboards. Then, just as suddenly, it collapsed into nothing. The old man's body slumped, hollow as a popped balloon. The silence stayed, waiting, crawling, testing every throat, every jaw, every desperate need for sound. We endured it for hours, I don't know how many. The clock stopped. The air thickened until every inhale felt stolen. When at last the bell tolled dawn, noise rushed back like a flood. Lights buzzed, pipes groaned, rats skittered. I gasped so hard my ribs ached. The guard finally spoke, lips still bleeding where he'd bitten it shut. That was the rule of silence. It comes once a season. Break it and the things inside the quiet come out to feed. I shook all over. What were they? He looked past me toward the chapel doors that pulsed faint gray. His voice was low, steady, older than bone. The Lee doesn't just hold men, it holds what men were never meant to hear. That night my reflection in the waxed floor leaned close, smiling too wide. "You almost spoke," it whispered. "Next time you won't last. Next time you'll crawl with the silence too." And for the first time, I wondered if silence wasn't just the absence of sound, but a hunger waiting to be fed. It began before dawn when the guard shook me awake. No words, just a lantern pressed into my palm. Its glow wasn't fire, thin and green like swamp gas caged in glass. "Walk," he ordered. His voice was low, careful, like the air itself was listening. We took a route I'd never seen. Corridors bent in ways that felt wrong, like someone had folded the building and we were walking along the crease. The walls here were polished smooth, not stone blocks but seamless surfaces that caught the lantern's glow as if they'd been waiting for it. "What is this place?" I whispered. He didn't slow. "The parade. Once a cycle, the Lee opens its doors for those without bodies. You'll see them, you mustn't touch. Rules simple: step aside when the phantoms pass, never walk among them. The hall widened, swallowing us. High windows lined the upper walls, but no light seeped through them, just a dull gray thick as ash. The air pressed down like water. Cold, not shivering cold, but heavy, like something was lying across my chest. And then they came. At first, a ripple like heat haze on asphalt. Then figures took shape. Dozens, then hundreds. Prison orange, heads bowed, arms chained though no iron bound them. Their faces blurred, unfinished, as if a careless painter had left them half done. They didn't walk so much as glide. Chains clinked, but it wasn't metal. It was memory, echoing across the stone. I pressed myself flat against the wall. The first phantom turned its head toward me. Its eyes were pits full of dust, but in the pits something sparked. Recognition. My throat clenched. Without thinking, I whispered, "Dad." The haze cleared for one awful heartbeat. I saw him, my father younger, face sharpened with sorrow and fury, his mouth opened. No sound, but I knew the shape of the word on his lips. "Run." The guard's hand slammed my chest, pinning me back. "Don't answer," he hissed. The haze swallowed my father's face. The phantom turned away, sliding back into the endless march. The hall filled until the air itself seemed to buckle. Some wept without tears, others laughed without throats. Some clutched wounds that weren't visible, staggering through eternity. Then one figure broke the rhythm, taller than the rest. Not orange, not anything. Its outline was ragged, stitched from shadow. A burlap sack covered its head, seams drawn tight where a face should be. The other phantoms parted around it, like water flowing past stone. The lantern shook in my hand. Its green glow shrank to a pinprick. "Who is that?" I breathed. The guard's jaw locked. "One the Lee can't name. Don't look, don't." But I did. The sack-faced phantom turned. It had no eyes, yet I felt it staring into me, colder than silence, older than hunger. The lantern went out. Darkness swallowed everything. The weight crushed me, and in the dark a voice boomed inside my skull, deeper than the chains, deeper than the horn. "Calvin, you march with us soon." The light snapped back. The figure was gone. The line thinned until only dust floated in the beam. The guard gripped my arm hard enough to bruise. His voice trembled. "You broke the rule. You looked too long. Now the parade knows your name." Back in the lobby, I stared down at the waxed floor. My reflection stared back, grinning. "You don't belong with the living anymore," it whispered. "The chains have you. The parade has you. The Lee has you. All that's left is which one gets you first." And from deep within Harrowgate, faint and steady, I heard it. Chains rattling. Counting steps I hadn't taken yet. The first rattle came while I was folding towels in laundry. Not the clank of the wringer, not pipes shifting in the walls. This sound was inside my skull, iron links dragged slow across stone. I froze mid-fold. The towel slipped from my hands. Rhonda's head snapped up. She saw my face, saw the way my jaw locked. Her eyes narrowed. "You hear it now, don't you?" I didn't answer. She spat into the bin. "Should have looked away during the parade. Chains don't stop once they find a name to follow." That night they found me again. I lay on my cot staring at the ceiling, praying for sleep when the sound dragged closer. The mattress dipped as if someone or something sat down beside me. My chest seized tight. The voice followed, metal scraping bone. "Calvin, step forward." I clenched my teeth. The chains laughed, not a chuckle, a rattle, a vibration that set my ribs humming. "Do you know what a chain is?" the voice asked. "A promise, a weight, a name bound in iron. You've been shackled since the horn stole your first breath. You just haven't felt the pull yet." The next day I stumbled through shift pale as chalk. Stu noticed first. "You look like hammered shit," he said. Did you ever hear them? I asked. The chains. He spat brown sludge into his cup. Course I have, everybody does once. Some folks ignore him, some follow him. Guess which one's live longer? Which? He grinned, teeth yellow and sharp. Neither. Later the guard found me. His eyes weighed heavier than usual. They're following you now, aren't they? I nodded. He didn't bother softening it. Rules clear, never speak back to them, not in words, not in thought. Chains feed on answers. Stay silent, maybe they'll pass. Maybe, I asked. He met my stare. The Lee doesn't give absolutes. That night, silence didn't save me. The chains dragged louder, circling the cot. I pressed my hands to my ears, bit my tongue until I tasted blood. Still, the voice came through, steady as breath. Your mother wears chains thicker than mine, it said. You've seen them, the straps, the muzzle, the ties, not leather, not rope, links. Only you can break them. I opened my eyes. In the dark, I saw faint lines glowing from my chest, stretching into blackness, taut as if pulling me forward. They tugged toward the warden's door. My pulse quickened. My breath came shallow. The voice rose, joined by others, a chorus of links grinding together. Knock, knock, knock. By morning, bruises ringed my wrists where no hand had touched me. The parchment in my pocket had changed again. New words bled across the page, rust-red ink curling like smoke. Break her chains. The parchment burned against my thigh all morning. Break her chains. Every corridor I walked through seemed to echo that command. By the time the guard summoned me to visitation, I wasn't sure if my boots were carrying me forward or if the links themselves were dragging me. He met me at the wall, arms folded, eyes harder than stone. You're not scheduled. I have to see her, I said. His jaw clenched, then loosened. Then remember this, never touch the bindings. They don't hold her, they hold the Lee back. The wall opened. My mother sat strapped as always. The muzzle bit into her face, leather darkened with spit and old blood. But her eyes lit when she saw me, not softened, burned, fierce, urgent. Mom, I whispered. Her gaze darted to her wrists, and that's when I saw it. Not leather, not buckles, not anything man-made, chains, glowing faintly, humming like the ones that haunted me in the dark. The voice from the night came back, slithering through my ribs. Your mother wears chains thicker than mine. The parchment seared my pocket. Break her chains. My hand rose without my permission. Fingers hovered inches above the links. They pulsed in time with my heartbeat, daring me to pull. Her eyes widened. She shook her head once, sharp, violent. Don't. The guard stepped closer, cudgel raised. Step back, Calvin. If you break those links, the scream she carries will burn through the county. Do you want that on your hands? I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My fingers trembled over the humming metal. Then she thrashed, slamming her head against the muzzle until blood spattered the floor, not struggling against me, warning me. She wanted me to see it wasn't her pleading, it was the chains. I froze. The reflection in the polished floor leaned closer, teeth glinting. Do it, it whispered. Break them, let her scream. Her eyes locked mine. Don't. The guard's cudgel lifted higher. The links rattled, vibrating with hunger, filling the chamber with a sound like 1,000 doors unlocking at once. What happens if I don't? I choked out. The guard's voice was grave dirt deep. Then the Lee keeps counting, and one day it reaches you. My hand fell away. The chains shrieked. Sparks spat off the glowing links. My mother sagged in her chair, eyes wet, relief and despair tangled together. The wall slammed shut. The guard grabbed my arm, bruising. You're marked now. The Lee knows you disobeyed. That parchment won't forgive you. I looked down. The ink had shifted again, bleeding into fresh words. Next time, no mercy. The parchment's warning gnawed at me. Next time, no mercy. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the chains tighten, dragging my dreams toward the warden's door. By dawn, I knew the Lee wasn't watching me anymore. It was waiting. The guard summoned me without a word, no explanation, just that look that said my turn had come. We walked deeper than I'd ever been, below laundry, below chapel, below even the phantom tears. The air smelled metallic, sharp, as if lightning had been caught in a jar. At the end of the passage stood a small chamber, stone walls slick with condensation. In the center, a black pedestal. On it rested the horn, not brass, not bone, something older. A rib too vast for any creature that walked this earth. Its surface rippled with faint sigils that shifted when I blinked. It breathed, inhale scraping my ribs, exhale rattling my teeth. My throat tightened. "What is this?" "The toll," the guard said. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed sorrow. "The city demands it. Every generation one of us pays. Your mother paid in scream, now it's your turn." The parchment in my pocket grew hot. New words bled across it as I watched. "Breathe or she breaks." I stepped closer. The horn seemed to lean toward me. My reflection shimmered on its curved surface, grinning wider than my real mouth. "Don't be afraid," it whispered. "This isn't punishment, it's inheritance. Your father blew it, your mother screamed it, now it's your turn to pay." My hand shook as I lifted the horn. It was heavier than stone, yet eager like a mouth waiting to drink. "What happens if I do?" I asked. The guard's jaw clenched. "The Lee eats what it needs, sometimes a voice, sometimes a soul, but if you refuse, your mother's chains snap and the scream burns the county down." The horn pulsed, hungry. "Blow," the guard said, not a command, a plea. I raised it to my lips. The chamber thinned, air collapsed, walls pressed inward. I inhaled deep and forced the breath out. The sound that followed wasn't sound at all, it was void, a hole torn through the world. My lungs emptied in an instant, scraped raw, my chest collapsed. The horn drank, cymbals flared red, then black, then vanished. And then I heard it, chains snapping, not hers, mine. The guard staggered back, eyes wide. "God help us, the toll didn't take your voice." I coughed, gasped, throat raw, but I could still speak, still breathe. "What did it take?" I rasped. The horn pulsed once more, then stilled. My reflection in its surface leaned close, whispering with the breath it had stolen. "Time." After the toll, nothing in Harrowgate felt the same. It wasn't louder, it wasn't darker, it was thinner, like the world's skin had been stretched too tight over something beneath it. The clocks were the first to betray me. In the lobby, the hands ticked toward dawn. In laundry, they clung stubborn to midnight. My wristwatch spun backward for a full minute, then lurched forward again. Stu noticed the change in me before I said a word. "You're pale," he muttered, chewing his toothpick flat, "like the years just ran you over." I laughed hollow. Maybe they did. He didn't laugh back. The guard avoided me for days. When I finally cornered him, he didn't stand tall or bark orders. He just stared at me like a man staring at a grave he'd already dug. "The toll didn't take your voice," he said, "didn't take your breath, it took something worse." "What?" I asked. He pointed down the long corridor toward the end. I never dared look too long. The warden's door waited there. Wood dark as oil, sigils crawling across its surface like fresh scars. And now it shimmered faintly, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. "It took your time, Calvin," the guard said. "Every day from now on, the Lee collects pieces of you. When the count runs out, that door will open." That night I dreamed the world in reverse. The town shrank to dirt roads. The mill folded back into timber. Houses peeled down to rafters and nails. The county crumbled into bare earth. And always, always the chains dragged me toward that door. When I woke, blood streaked my palms. Not from fists or nails, just skin splitting as if age had clawed me overnight. In the lobby, my reflection grinned up at me from the waxed floor. "Feel it yet?" it asked. "Yes." "Good. The Lee finally gave you what it always wanted, a head guard born to open what others keep shut. When your count ends, you'll step through, and then you'll see what's been knocking back." At the next visitation, I asked my mother the question that had burned through every chain and every breath. "Do you know what the door is?" Her eyes sharpened, clear for the first time in years. She nodded once. Then with effort she pressed her bound hands against the table. The chains rattled. And in the rattle I felt the answer, not spoken, not signed, but carved straight into me. "Don't open it. Whatever it promises, don't." The wall slammed shut before I could say another word. When I checked my pocket, the parchment had rewritten itself again. Fresh ink, rust red, curling across the page. "You already have." The corridor stretched ahead, longer than it had ever been. The warden's door glimmered at the end, pulsing like lungs, breathing in time with mine. And in that breath I understood. The Lee was never built for men. It was built to hold what waited behind that door. And now the countdown had begun.